Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 90 of the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I hope you are doing well. On the show today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating conversation about karma. And we get into so many aspects of karma, right? From the law of karma to how karma is a part of yoga. And even though we have all these laws of karma, which is often not very clearly known, why do we still end up behaving in a certain way? And then we definitely get into the conversation about good karma versus bad karma, papa and punya as we call it, and we draw parallels to new age law of the new age concept of law of attraction, and is that connected to karma? And as yoga teachers and students, we want to know how to convert karma into karma yoga. And we talk about the role of a teacher when it comes to getting help with the karmas and so much more. Okay. My guest who is here for this topic is Medha Narwani. She comes from a family of deep-rooted Vedic values. Her initial career was that of an economist, and she ended up traveling to Australia, US, UK, and really gave her a global outlook. But she was always very spiritually curious, and that took her back to India. So she trained under her guru in a traditional guru-shishya parampara, okay, the guru-disciple tradition. And she's pursued her master's in yoga. And she's also an author of a book, a novel that is called Mystic Road Warrior. And she talks about it at the end of today's episode. She strongly believes that traditional yoga is an experiential science, and it fundamentally transforms any sincere practitioner. So I want you to really get into the layers of the conversation here. This is an in-depth conversation about karma. There might be things in here that you grasp instantly. There will be concepts that Medha will mention that, depending on where you are in your yoga journey, it may or may not be second nature to you. But it's one of those conversations that you circle back to again and again and really get a more deeper, authentic and educated understanding of karma. And I hope you get that through this conversation. As always, please remember to rate, review, and share this podcast with your yoga friends. It's the only way we can get this content in front of other people. As always, enjoy today's show. I will see you on the other side. Hi, my name is Arundhati, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I'm an ex-Bollywood dancer turned yoga and wellness educator. I've built a 6-figure business as an immigrant, woman of color yoga teacher with no business background, no handstands, pure instinct, and the free information found on Google. If you love doing yoga and you dream of teaching it someday, this podcast is for you. We go over everything from doing and teaching yoga to scaling a small business, living a modern yoga lifestyle, and so much more. You'll find interesting, fun, raw conversations along with some tips, tricks, strategies, and insights in this podcast. So grab your cup of chai and let's jump in. Hi, Medha. Welcome to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here.
So you and I are going to get into this really, what I think is a fascinating conversation about the law of karma. And just before we hit record, we were talking about just briefly how karma is often misunderstood and there's only surface knowledge of karma. And, you know, I've seen karma being just used in any random context, and I'm sure you have too. So for the listeners, to kick things off, can we start at understanding what is the law of karma?
Yes, that's a really interesting one, the law of karma. So when we think of yoga, actually, we think of asanas, pranayams, mudras, and bandhas. So that we need to really spend time practicing yoga. And this is really true for other margs like Hatha Marg or Raj Yoga. But yoga really is a way of life, as we know. It involves us every moment. It involves action. So before I get to law of karma, I just wanted to dive a little bit on what is karma and how is it related to yoga kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So karma comes from the Sanskrit root word kri, which means to do or to act. So we are literally taking actions every moment while we are living. So karma yoga needs no extra time for practice like asana, mudras, and bandhas. It's actually happening every moment. And this is what we don't really realize it. It's just that we're not always aware of our actions. But when we become consciously aware of our actions and choices, then it becomes karma yoga. So that's basically the background of it. And we also know a lot of definitions of yoga, and there's not just one definition, as you know. So Maharishi Patanjali's Yoga Sutra says that it's yoga chitta vritti nirodh. So the emphasis here is on stopping the fluctuations of the mind. But there are multiple definitions of yoga. So the focus on the karma comes from the Bhagavad Gita, right? So there are two other definitions which in Bhagavad Gita. One is samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is samatvam. So how do we work with equanimity? That's the secret of karma yoga. The other one is yoga karmashu kaushalam. It is the skill with which we do actions. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about the context of skill. So when Lord Krishna was giving his advice to Arjun, and he didn't mean to tell Arjun that you become a more skillful warrior. Arjun was already one of the best for his time. Mm-hmm. So it's not the skill in what we do, but how we do our work. So we'll talk a little bit more about this one. And the other verse, which is highly contentious and really famous in Bhagavad Gita, is karmane vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Now, the word adhikar in this, people get their noses out of joints about the word adhikar. A lot of people say, why should we do any actions if we don't have the right to the fruits of it? Because it means we have the right to perform actions, but not to the fruits of those actions. Now, the word adhikar is not the same as we understand adhikar. Actually, in Sanskrit, there is no real meaning of adhikar. It's loosely translated as rights. But it's more about qualification. What is our eligibility and qualification to do the action in the right way without expecting any results? That's what is turning it all into karma yoga. So when we understand these three definitions of karma from Bhagavad Gita, we start to understand karma yoga a lot better. And then we live a pretty good life. And we also progress spiritually on the path. So for all this, we first have to understand what is karma and what are the roots of karma and what are the laws of karma. So what we understand from karma is it's a profound philosophy. Like you said, a lot of people misunderstand. It's like a very rustic understanding of karma, that as you sow, shall you reap kind of a thing. But karma has a very profound philosophy. It is really deep-rooted in the foundations of Sanatan Dharma, which is the eternal laws of nature. And it became operational and applicable at the time of creation itself. And it impacts every human being because we're all involved in action at some stage. So karma operates under Sanatan Dharma. It really impacts us in every way. It's the principle of cause and effect, action and reaction. So these laws bind us all the time. Now, when we don't understand these laws of nature, it's like there's a beautiful analogy that's been used, that we are like drifting on a choppy ocean without a sail and a rudder. And then we are at the mercy of weather, the rocks, the icebergs, or whatever else nature throws us at. And we're definitely heading for a shipwreck then. So, but we understand the laws of karma. It's smooth sailing. Then we sail to our destination without being tossed about in life. So that is the general understanding of the laws of karmas. So the other thing is that we think of karma like most people. I asked this question of a friend, and I said, "What do you think of karma?" And she's like, "It's kind of punishment." So, but that's the thing. It's not really punishment as we understand it. It's like we do something bad and something bad's going to happen to us. It's actually more of a spiritual law, which exists only to facilitate our spiritual growth. Now, the premise here is that we generally tend to learn when we ourselves have to endure some type of suffering we may have inflicted on someone else. So that experience makes us more compassionate, thoughtful, respectful of the other person. And so that's why the goal of karma is to give us all the needed experiences we need in our life to evolve into greater levels of awareness. So it becomes a means to teach us by experience. It's not a punishment. It's there to awaken us. And so this is the key to karma, really. So all those actions which are taking us closer to the self is good karma. And all those actions which will be taking us further away from the self, taking us away from the goal of moksha, liberation, is to be avoided. So those are the basic understanding. Now, you asked me, what are the laws of karma? So we understand karma as just actions, but actually it's not just actions. Every thought, word, or deed is karma. So you and I are talking right now, right? So this is karma. Every single thing you've thought of since morning is karma. So you can imagine by the end of one day, 1 month, 1 year, or at the end of our lives, how many karmas we have generated. Now you multiply that over several lifetimes and you have like
it's too much. Yeah.
Colossal karmic debt, which is beyond human understanding. Only God can understand what we've done, basically. The system, I call it the system of karma. The system says that if there are any outstanding karmic debts, not just negative karmas, but even the positive karmas, you have to balance them both at the end of our lives. And unless we do that, we will not get liberated. So then all our karmic debts are carried over to the next life. So this is where the reincarnation theory comes in, which Hinduism believes in. This is Sanatan Dharma. So it's because the system does not like to leave any loose ends or anything incomplete. Now, we think of it like an accountant, right? The accountant has to balance the accounts at the end of each financial year so that no debts are carried over to the next year. In the same way, we too have to clear a karmic balance of both positive and negative karmas. Basically, it's as simple as that. When we do not clear our balance, the system keeps us bound to cycles of life and death, to the samsara. So in order to get out of the system, even if the objective is just to live a good life, not all of us are planning to have moksha in this life itself. People just want to have a very good material life. But to live a good life, one has to understand what are the laws of this karma that is binding us. This is where it gets interesting now. So the law of karma says that anyone who works solely for themselves, who's selfish in action and without consideration of the world around them, they will inevitably have to suffer their consequences. So the first law of karma that comes up is really Newton's law of action. It says every action has its equal and opposite reaction. There is a cause, so there will be an effect. So if you throw a ball at the wall, it'll return with equal force, right? So if you harm someone, then it'll boomerang with equal force. That is the first law. So what you send out comes back full force. It's the law of nature that everything returns to its source. I had written about this in one of my posts. Now, for example, the system is cyclical in nature, right? Everything is cyclical. Okay, so electricity leaves the dynamo and completes the circle back to the dynamo. Water evaporates, it forms clouds and returns as rain. In the same way, humans are born, we live through many cycles of life, and eventually we all have to return to our origin, the Purush. So this is just the law of nature. Everything is cyclical. So in this context, it means that whatever we send out, it must return to the source. So that's the first law. The second law says that whatever you desire, you will receive. And this is good news. We have many desires in life and we do want to manifest those desires. And we will talk about law of attraction in some time as well, I suppose. So what it says is if you desire it, you will receive it. But karma is not just action, it's thoughts as well, as we just said. So thoughts arise from what? It arises from desires. So they become action through word become deeds become actions become our character, and character sets our destiny. That's how the law of karma operates. So it really starts with a thought or a desire, and we don't even realize that it's starting at the thought level.
I was just thinking about that as you were speaking, because and I mean, like we said, right, there's a lot of misinformation about karma. And I was under the impression that until you act on a thought, you don't accumulate karma. But it's fascinating to me and scary also.
It is true that you first have to think about it and also act on it for it to turn into actions. But what is happening is with the moment you start thinking about something, you are fortifying your samskars. Now, these are latent impressions in your subconscious mind, in the chitta. So every thought you have, it fortifies it. And then it becomes magnified. And then you're compelled to take certain actions. That's what's happening with the thought. So that's why we are told that, be careful of what you're thinking. be mindful that what is meditation is trying to have a no thought zone so that we're not constantly generating karmas for ourselves all the time, or at least fortifying our samskars.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So that is the second law of karma. What it says is what you desire, you will receive. And this desire has to be fulfilled at some stage. So it will come back to us at some stage or the other. So if we send out love, then more love will come back because you've put that thought or the sankalp out and it will come back. And if you desire wealth, which is good news, you will receive it one day, if not now. So the moment we set the intention or sankalp in motion, so this is sankalp, then it must be fulfilled.
Okay.
So that's what's happening with the laws of karma. So there is a next law of karma as well, which says that once it is set in motion, it's irreversible.
Oh.
So what you have sown, nothing stops it from yielding results. And this is where the maxim comes in, what you sow shall you reap. So that's where this is the part where everybody understands. So it will play out at some stage or the other, either in this life or the next one. So it has already left the archer. The archer has shot the arrow, it's gone out there and it will reap. So it's just that we don't know when that seed will germinate, and so that causes a lot of confusion.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people suddenly become quite perplexed. What happened to my fortune? Like life suddenly takes a U-turn. We've seen that fame suddenly turns to disgrace. Some actor is very famous, the next moment nobody wants to see him. So gain turns to loss, or joy turns to sorrow, health to disease, life to death. We know these things, right? Every moment we are at the mercy of karma, which we just don't know how it's germinating. And really we are left wondering what happened. Like, why do we have to go through it? We don't understand because we don't understand the laws of karma. So we're constantly questioning, why is it happening to me? So what it says is when we start to understand these laws of karma, we don't live in an autopilot mode or generating positive and negative karmas each moment without consciously knowing what we're doing. So we live without understanding the impact of all our thoughts and actions, and that's how we are all living at the moment. But when life, and especially when life doesn't work out, you've heard a lot of people say they get really angry and frustrated and they start this blame game. It's my parents, they put me up for it.
They find someone to blame. Mm-hmm.
The blame game does not stop because it gives us it's a catharsis for us that we can shift the blame onto somebody else, that it's our siblings, it's life, it's the government, it's situation. And the best blame game is shifted onto God.
Oh, yeah.
For dealing us an unfair hand. How dare God give me this? We blame everyone else but ourselves. But the law of karma says that there is no one else to blame
but yourself.
We have to take responsibility. Yeah, for our own thoughts, for our own actions. We planted the seed. So whether we have roses growing in our backyard or poison ivy, it's our doing, right?
Absolutely.
So we alone are responsible for our lives, and this is how we become the creators of our own destiny.
To me, it's fascinating because there's just so much in this one question, right? Like, what is the law of karma? But how does karma then become a part of yoga?
Yes. So karma is, like we said right in the beginning, was that we are transferring and converting all our unconscious actions, because every moment we are generating actions. But when we become conscious, then they become karma yoga. So that's how it starts to work. When we are unconsciously acting on an impulse, it's reaction. So we're not really living with karma yoga. So we have to become mindful of all our actions at all times. So there are lots of ways, there's different techniques and steps, which karma yoga talks about in Bhagavad Gita is explained beautifully as to how you can convert some of them, like the definitions, One of them is yoga is samatvam, right? It's equanimity. When you start performing your actions without being attached to the outcomes of it, when you do it with equanimity, and you're not very elated when you're happy, or not, and neither too depressed when you're sad. And there's a balance in your life between joy and sorrow, pain and loss, criticism and fame. This is how what yoga teaches us to live, to have a balanced outlook. So that's how you're converting all your actions into samatvam. And also the skill with which we do our work it's not just skill in, like I said, it's taking actions which make us do certain, it's not the skill of the work itself. So like I said, if I'm a good accountant, I can't become the best accountant after I've already reached a threshold. But it's the way I am doing my work. That is kaushalam. It's the skill in the way and the approach behind what I'm doing. So that's what the karma yoga is telling us to do, that you don't get too attached to anything. And the third one is that it also is saying is that you need to take sattvic actions, and which we will talk about as to why we need to take sattvic actions. There are different types of actions as karmic. This is rajasic actions, there's tamasic actions, and there are sattvic actions. And then karma yoga also talks about that you have to do everything with a sense of detachment, like we spoke about. So the goal of karma and karma yoga is to reach a state where we generate no karams, neither good nor bad. It's nishkam karam. So this is the state of a brahmanyani. Yeah.
I really want to just pause on that more for the listeners to just let that sink in for a moment, because often, Medha, and I'm sure you know this, people are chasing good karma, and they want to accumulate more good karma and run away from bad karma. But that state of no karma is often something that is overlooked because of how karma has been oversimplified. So my next question here would be, so now we know the laws of karma, okay, at least in this moment, in this conversation, but we still end up, for lack of a better word, failing. And why do we still end up acting in a way that is contrary to this? Is the answer just we're human?
Definitely, to err is definitely human. But I think the answer is really we are like moths drawn to a flame. That's how I see it. It's like we are compelled to take certain actions because, like I said before, it's a samskars. It's like hardwired into our chittas. We can't do anything else other than what we have programmed ourselves to do. And to break this programming is actually karma yoga. Because we are always in autopilot mode and we're always reacting. So we have to break that stronghold of our samskars. So the way it works is that each thought, it generates a vibration. It's an oscillation force. And this is recorded in the chitta, or the subconscious mind, as samskars, which we spoke about. These are habitual tendencies or latent impressions we have generated. So with every thought, these impressions become stronger. So if I have negative thoughts about something and continuously, if I think about it 25 to 100 to 5,000 times a day, if it's possible, then I've really fortified my samskars. Those impressions have become very strong. So that compels me to act a certain way. So we become habitually prone to thinking a certain way and acting a certain way. So for example, if someone cuts us off in traffic, and an angry person will get more angry. And it's more prone to road rage, as we see, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's because that's how they are used to reacting. And it's inbuilt into our samskars that we just react. We don't consciously respond. And that's what we have to get ourselves to do. So as we said, thoughts become deeds, deeds become character, and character sets our destiny.
Comes destiny. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I really like how you put that in perspective. So then I'm going to bring you to I think what will be the most common or popular question here. So there are, you mentioned this earlier, there are positive karma and negative. There's positive and negative karma, right? And essentially what you and I would call paap and punya.
Yes.
So what qualifies as negative karma? What qualifies as positive karma? And how do we mitigate this through life? I mean, that's probably a giant question, like how to mitigate it through life, but you can skip that but at least get us started with what is negative and positive karma?
Okay, so this is definitely a question right up everybody's alley, because I still get asked this question. Am I doing something bad? Am I doing something right? And it takes a lot of reflection to think about it. First of all, we shouldn't think of karmas in terms of good and bad, right and wrong. These are man-made judgments, right? Law of karma has nothing to do with man-made morality or ethics. Now, these things keep changing with time and place.
So true. Mm-hmm.
But the laws of karmas, they don't change, right? So laws of karma, they do not judge anyone. It is impervious to whoever's involved. There's a king, a priest, a beggar, a Wall Street trader, a yogi. It does not care. It'll mete out the same justice to everyone under the sun. The only thing it cares about is balancing the sheets, like we said. Leave no loose ends, leave no prisoners by the end of it, close the account. That's all it thinks about. So in order to become liberated from the system, we have to balance both our negative and positive karma. So what is paap or negative karma, which everybody asks? So it's everything which is taking us away from ourselves, right? And so we start taking an actions which is not conducive for our spiritual growth, and somehow they turn to paap kind of thing, or negative Krishna. So we can look at it from the perspective of purusharthas. So there's purushartha says that dharma, artha, kama, moksha, that is the goal of every human being. It does not, artha and kama, you need desires, right? You can't live in this world without any desire. We are here because of our desires, and there's nothing wrong with desires. But what the system is saying is that fulfill your desires, but with the goal of spiritual growth. So if we indulge in pleasures alone and become a slave to our desires, then we take rajasic actions. This is the materialistic attitude that does not lead to spiritual growth. And it says that have a family, but keep spiritual goal in mind. Don't become so attached that, you start becoming very forlorn and sad and depressed all the time when they're not around. Now, this is what the system is saying. I know this is one of the toughest things we can do in a relationship, is to distance ourselves from our family members. We're not saying distance yourself, but have a perspective of what is real, what is not, kind of thing. That's what karma says. So it says buy things, but with the aim of need, not wants. We're always buying rubbish, basically. So it's saying have a perspective, and then acquire wealth, but through honesty. Do your business, but without cheating other people. So meet all kinds of people, but without judgments of likes and dislikes, rag and dvesh, which is what we really do all the time. So what is paap? In Yoga Sutra, karma is graded as Krishna or black karmas, which it calls negative karmas. The second is shukla or white karma, which is positive karmas. And then it says a third type is mixed karmas of both Krishna and shukla karmas. And the fourth type is what we come to the nishkam karma stage, where it is neither good nor bad. It's called akrishna or shukla karmas. And that's where we need to be. But for most of the time, because for want of understanding karmas, we land up in Krishna karmas, negative karmas, because we don't understand how the system is operating. So the rule of paap or Krishna karma is that do not deliberately harm anyone at any time. Now, this is something, we don't think about, but this is what it says. If you harm someone, like the obvious harm is killing, hating,
physical harm. Yeah,
physical harm. We all know that, okay, that's bad. So that's the obvious ones. But also it's a certain way of thinking. Like, our samskars are fortified when we say, I'll break him, I'll hurt him, I'll beat him, or I'll exploit him, I'll teach him a lesson. How dare he? I'll show him who's boss. That kind of thinking. That egoistic attitude is being driven by our samskars to react. So these thought patterns generally lead to Krishna karmas and negative karmas. So, and a lot of times people think that we can go to a temple, do our pujas, and God will wash away all our sins. This is like everybody
doesn't
in India.
work like that. Mm-hmm.
I wish it was that simple, and people think it's working, but the God must be sitting and thinking, all the stuff that you did before this, you really need to account for it. So prayers work, of course prayers work, but when you take the right feelings with you, there's devotion. But even then, if you deliberately harm someone by killing somebody or even hurting them all the time, then you have to atone for that kind of thing. So another example, which is not really obvious to a lot of people, and this happens all the time. So we see a beggar on the street, and most of the time we'll say, either we ignore it or we say he deserves it or she deserves it. This is just their bad karma. This is like a preoccupation we have in India as well, where we start judging everybody. It's like, why should I help anybody? It's their bad karma. So what the system is saying is, by judging the person in need, we actually start accumulating karmas for ourselves. Even judgment is in that category. So most of us go through life judging each other. Like, we judge on the basis of the skin, race, religion, occupation, social status. So everything hinges on our strong likes and dislikes, rag and dvesh. So the law of karma says that the moment we start judging, we become involved in the process of cause and effect, which is the law. So we may judge someone and say, we think that nothing is going to happen. But what happens is, when we judge someone, we have started the cause, and that judgment will come back to us at a later stage. So
Got it.
judgment is really not the action of a true self. It's an action of the personality, that the human personality that we have worn, the mask that we wear. So either we judge people from a lower human personality, and we accrue bad karmas for this, or negative karmas rather, or we look at from a higher self. So nature does not judge. So it's completely impersonal. God is just an impersonal witness to the actions of human beings. He does not interfere unless he's called to do so. So that is paap, with the intention of hurting. And another aspect of paap is, what is the intention with which you do things?
I was just going to bring up intention, because isn't that the underlying aspect?
Yes, you're right, because it all comes down to intention. For example, we have a doctor. He may cut off a gangrene arm to save a person's life, right? And it saves the person from dying. But if a criminal cuts off an arm to steal a gold bangle, their intentions are completely different. So the doctor will not accrue paap or negative karmas, but the criminal who's done it with the intention of harming somebody will definitely do it. So it's not so black and white. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So can I ask you a question on that scenario that you just gave us? So a doctor who, say, amputates a limb because it was required, at that point, yes, he's doing his, what I would say, dharma and duty. And is he accumulating good karma, or is there nothing accumulating for him at that point?
I think there will not be any karmas accumulated if you do it with the intention of dharma. This is what Bhagavad Gita is all about.
Okay.
Right? Because you are doing your duty. In fact, there is a shlok in Bhagavad Gita which says that if you do your dharma, no matter what, nobody accrues any sin. And I've actually highlighted that every time I had to think about karams and dharma, I had to think about it, that you do not accrue any sins for doing it. In fact, any action that we take which is good, there's got to be some shortcoming to it. So like a teacher, she will teach. She's doing good dharma, good karams. She's teaching the student, but she might just have to scold the child. So the scolding becomes the downside of it. There's a shortcoming. A soldier, he has to go and fight a war, but the soldier does it for his country, so he has to kill, right? Now, this can be a very contentious topic, because people don't understand that all killing is not there. It's because of the intention behind it, behind the killing, not actually the act of it, which accrues karams. So that's how it really works with the question that you've said, that it is the intention behind it. There's another really interesting example which I get asked, is that when we walk on the road, right? So if we accidentally step on ants, I don't think anybody thinks about it, but I used to think about this. So if I step on an ant, what happens? Is this paap? But if we deliberately...
It's unknowing action, right? It was unknowing.
Exactly. So we didn't do it deliberately. But if we go down the path and we see how many ants we can kill along the way, then that's bad karma. So
understood.
The law of this is really live and let live. This should apply to all beings, not just human beings. It's plants, animals, all beings. And another example of bad karma, like someone treats me bad, right? We're always treating somebody or the other badly, unknowingly, knowingly, whatever. So the knee-jerk reaction is to lash back at that person, to take revenge. Like, how dare they? I want to show them who's boss, kind of thing. Definitely bad karma for both, because it is done with the intention of harming each other. So it doesn't matter what others do. We have to protect our own karmas. That's what the law of karma says. This is what the karma theory is about. Let others do what they have to do. You focus on your own karma. What others do is their karma.
Yes. So is that how punya works then?
Yes. So now punya is the same. This is just the opposite of that, really. So these are all the sattvic actions we take. Sattvic actions are those actions where we think of the well-being of other people as well. It's not just, self-absorbed. Rajasic actions are mostly like, what's in it for me? It's driven by passion, by ambition, with ego. Everything we see in this world is actually Rajasic action. Sattvic action is when we start going deeper and deeper into yoga. We become mindful of everyone around us, aware of what we are doing. How are we even shutting a door? How are we handling a knife to somebody? Are we pointing it to somebody? When Swami Vivekananda had to go overseas, his guru had to see how he was handling a knife, and he knew that he was ready to go when he gave the knife with the handle part of it, not pointing it to the guru. So those are sattvic mindset. It's the actions we take. So the first rule of punya is, if you can, always help someone in need. And to help someone is the highest dharma. This is across all the sages of India, all the books that are written out there. They all speak of the same thing. Help somebody in need, if that is the highest dharma. So coming back to the example of a beggar. Now, if he genuinely needs help, then if we help them, it becomes positive karma. Our role is not to judge, like, what's his karma? Is he worth it? He deserves to suffer. Our job is not to intake more negative karma. Of course, there are some beggars who don't deserve it in India because they're just sitting there as a business. So you have to know, like, who you're giving to as well.
Discernment, essentially.
Exactly. You have to use your viveka khyati over here, know right from wrong every moment. But our job is not to take in more negative karma by refusing to help someone. So as much as you can, that becomes a positive karma if you can help somebody. So other positive karmas that we can do all the time is giving charity, of course, or passing on knowledge, like, to helping others in need kind of thing. So those are the obvious examples of positive karma. Basically, all the actions which make us feel good about ourselves. We feel compassionate. It comes out of compassion, kindness, thoughtfulness, consideration. These are
empathy.
Empathy is a great word. Yes. I mean, that's how people connect with each other. So we are not silos living in an island. We are interconnecting with everybody else. And that's what karma is trying to teach us over here. Not as a punishment, but because this is how we evolve. Then we come down to what were both good and bad karmas. Because this is the gray area where most of us invariably find ourselves. Because we don't always do good karmas and always do bad karmas. Sometimes we just land up in between, So what the Vedas are really saying is that, in the karma, the Vedas, the first part of the Vedas is about karma kand, like the action portion of the Vedas. And it's all about propitiating the energy realms, the gods and goddesses, the adhidevics. And it's done through rituals and sacrifices and charities. Even today in India, we employ a priest to hold these rituals so that we can live a very good material life and we have material gains from it. So we feed animals, we do charity, donate food, donate money to temples. Now, but what is happening is we have one eye on good karma, but the other on our results. So, So what Bhagavad Gita, what Krishna is saying is that if you have to do your actions without being attached to the results of those actions. So this is doing both at the same time. You're doing something, but you're also doing it because of some kind of reward. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it, right?
Yes.
This is a really funny one, actually, in India, when we want to donate and we want to put our names up on big buildings and plaques and big organizations. We must let everybody know that we've done it.
Actually feels like it's opposite of everything, right?
Yeah, that's because we are in a Kali Yuga age. So let's just say that.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I wouldn't go there, but okay, yeah.
So there's a really funny Hindi phrase which says, this part is not funny, but the next one is, it says, Neki kar darya mein dal. Do good and let it flow with the river, right? But today it's become Neki kar Facebook mein dal. You have
Took me a second, but yeah.
You have to make sure that everyone in social media knows that how charitable you are, how good you are, what you're capable of, who your friends are.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we won't pick up the phone to wish our husband and wives. We want to announce it on Facebook that, I love you so much kind of thing. So these are the types of actions which are both considered good and bad kind of thing. So there are lots of these states of good and bad karmas and a lot of examples of this. Now, the last state is Krishna Shukla, which is what we need to get to, is where we don't generate any karmas for ourselves. And this is the state of karmasya, is the quality of karma. And this is where the Brahmanyanis, the realized masters, those who have reached Kaivalya, one established in Kaivalya, who's realized, they reach Samadhi, they are in this state. But of course, not all of us can reach that state, but at least we can endeavor along the path as to how not to generate karmas and to become consciously aware of our actions. That's the other question I get sometimes, is how do I become consciously aware of my actions? What actions? Like, I just act. I'm not thinking.
But isn't that all of yoga, though? The practice.
That's exactly it. So that's it. And what Bhagavad Gita is backed by another chapter of karma yoga. It is buddhi yoga. There's actually a whole chapter on that which says that you have to employ your own intellect, your intelligence. You have to do vichar of whether you're doing right or wrong. So you have to think, analyze, and then act. Why? Because this is the difference between man and animal. Animal can't think for itself. So, but we have evolved to become humans. So we need to think. So if we use our buddhi to discern between what is right action and wrong action every moment, then we start to make right choices and then we progress. And then this changes our destiny according to our level of intelligence, whether we are using it or misusing our intelligence all the time. So really what the sages say is that you have to be alert every moment and do vichar. Am I doing right? Am I doing wrong? First, you need to think, then act. Then you make the conscious choices and you accrue good karmas along the way when you have done vichar. So that's how it works with paap and punya.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So in this modern popular world of yoga and mysticism and simplification, oversimplification, this, and there was this book that came out years ago, and it was all about the law of attraction, right? And it's the new age. It's a very new agey thing, is how I see it. But is this connected to karma or is this just something else?
Yes, this gets a lot of traction, this topic. A lot of people are fixated with the law of attraction. And I really feel that a part of it was taken from this karma theory itself. Now, there is some good news and some bad news for this. So the system says that once we have set the intention, taken a sankalp, set the desire, we have a desire, so there must be a cause. No, there is a cause, so there must be an effect, right? So when that effect will manifest is not under our control. That's what we don't know. When it will materialize, we cannot tell. So it can come in a most unexpected way, or we can get really bad results, or we can be completely disappointed. We don't know why or how all of this operates. So somebody who took the law of attraction and came up with this theory only took parts of it. They didn't take the other part. So there are two things in this. Now, if everybody desires to become super rich, like Mukesh Ambani or Jeff Bezos, or become like super good looking, like, I don't know, some film star, Brad Pitt, I don't know, anybody.
Hrithik Roshan, some people will.
Yes, your heartbeat, Hrithik Roshan. Or just become good, Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
I doubt anybody wants to do that in this age, but yes, Mother Teresa is a very good example. So everybody has a wish to be somebody other, but can this really happen if all of us want to become this? So we have to see this in the perspective of past karmas. So these people have come with their own accumulated karmas from previous lives. So they're playing out a certain role in this lifetime. And when they exhaust their karmas, they will go back to the drawing board again, just like everybody else. So it really depends on the karmas they generate now in this life, which will keep them going or not going, or they'll progress or regress. Now, all our relationships and experiences are tied to past actions and even our past lives. That's what reincarnation is. So Vedanta speaks of 3 types of karmas that as a Jivatma, the embodied soul, we travel with. One of them is prarabdha karma, which people don't really think about. Now, these are the fruits of our past karmas that we are bound to experience in this life. They are shaping the events and experience of our present life. It includes the way we look, where we are born, the place and the country of our birth, the family we are born into, our siblings, our upbringing, the kind of experiences we have, the friends we made along the way. According to the system, it's saying is that you're bound to all of this. We will not escape our prarabdha karma in this lifetime. We just cannot escape it. It can only be exhausted by experiencing it. And so that's why the law of attraction finds it harder to manifest, because we probably, there's a backlog of all the karmas that are still coming into our life. The second one, it says in Vedanta, is that sanchit karma. Now, these are the sum total of all the actions that we started in a previous lives. So it remains in a storehouse of samskars, right? So when there's the right time, place, and situation, a portion of the sanchit karma will be taken, and then they will materialize as prarabdha karma in our current life. So there's an analogy of an archer in Vedanta explains that it's all the arrows that the archer has stashed in the back, and it's waiting to be used. And when they get used, that becomes the prarabdha karma. Now, the third part is the most interesting one. This is the part of free will. So up until now, we feel like, okay, we're helpless victims of a karmic system, and what we can't do anything.
It's out of our control.
It's out of our control, and just feel a little helpless about things. But now this is a stage when you start to feel more empowered. So this is a part of free will. So what it says is, right now we have a choice. Every thought, word, or action that you are going through today, you can create your own choice right now. Are you going to go back to your samskars and react all the time, or are you going to be positive about things and start to change your samskar patterns? So this is our free will, which will shape our future or destiny. Are we taking sattvic actions every moment, or are we going to keep doing tamasic and rajasic actions all the time? So this is the karam that we will experience sometime in the future. This is your kriyaman karmas. So there's a saying, actually. It says, if you want to know your past life, all you have to do see is your current conditions, how you're living right now. If you want to know your future, see your current actions.
Mm-hmm.
So this
so powerful.
puts all the emphasis on how and what you're doing right now. So, there's also a lot of people say, like, I see somebody is doing wrong all the time. He's cheating, lying, whatever they're doing. But only good things keep happening to that person. Why is that so? A lot of people think about this. That's because it's probably just as good karma that he's reaping now as prarabdha karma, right? What he's brought with him from his past life. Now, but if he starts taking wrong actions now, he becomes egoistic, or she becomes egoistic, mean, or arrogant. If they start to misuse this free will, misuse their buddhi, their discernment, then after the credits of good karmas finish, destiny will catch up.
Fair enough.
So every moment in life, we are given a choice. Karma gives us an opportunity to use our buddhi, turn to darkness, react, or turn towards the light, become more compassionate, loving, kind, thoughtful, considerate, sattvic actions. And this is what makes us evolve spiritually. So the free will determines who we will become in the future. And once we start taking total responsibility for who we are because of the choices we made, in the past, life really straightens out. We're not struggling so much. We're not fighting with the society, the world, our parents, or everybody else. We start to make better, more conscious choices out of love and compassion each moment. Now, there's another aspect to it. Again, it comes back to intention. Is the intention behind the desire whether this law of karma or law of attraction will manifest or not manifest? So what matters is the purity of that intention. Ultimately, you see, all desires are fulfilled by God, right? We may pray for something, but whether we will get it or not is still God's grace. That's what it says. So, for example, if we pray with absolute sincerity and really desire it, that, God, please finish off a competitor, kill it, annihilate them, destroy them, wipe them out, finish them. Now, with that kind of thinking, will it manifest? So
absolutely not.
According to the law of karma, in fact, what you're thinking and desiring, you yourself will receive it. So,
okay.
So that's how it's going to boomerang back to you. So even those who engage in, sometimes you hear of occult practices, dark practices, or whatever they're doing to harm each other, eventually it all rebounds back to them. So, but if your desire is pure, if it's not to harm anyone, it's for a good cause, then it's more likely to manifest. We may not get the results in this life, right? The scene will be set for another lifetime. All we have to do is take the right actions right now. So, for example, if a student wants to pass an exam, she cannot just pray to God. God will simply say, please study. It's that joke, where a man wants to win a lottery and he begs God, please, 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 God, make me win this lottery. And God says, please, 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 just buy a lottery ticket. So that's what basically it comes down to. We have to make the effort and have the right intention. So once the effort is made by us first, then it starts to manifest in the right way. But we have to make that effort. So coming back to whether law of attraction works or not, right? If I come with a heavy karmic baggage of sanchit karmas waiting to be played out as prarabdha karma in this life, I'm entangled, right?
Got it.
Can I then become what I desire? Maybe not. Sometimes it works if there's no karmic obstruction, but there's a heavy karmic baggage, then I may desire all I want, but unless I clear the past karmas, I may not receive it. It may not manifest straight away, but then, who knows? This is the black hole. We desire many things, but actually we do not know how it will manifest. We just cannot calculate or understand the algorithms involved in God's supercomputer of karmas. Only He knows. That's it.
Yes, these three karmas are really, it clarifies a lot. It's confusing because you have to keep going back to it and really sitting with it and understanding it a lot more. But it also puts a lot of things in perspective. So because this is a yoga teacher audience that will be listening to this conversation largely, how does one turn karma into karma yoga?
Yes. Now that basically sums it up, like turning all our actions into karma yoga, which we spoke about, is that how do we turn all our actions into karma yoga? How do you live a good life in this material world, but also progress with spiritual growth? And that is the essence of karma yoga. So the first eligibility or criteria for karma yoga is do all your actions in a sattvic way, which we have been talking again and again. I'm repeating this because it is such an important aspect of a sattvic action. The sattvic action always considers other people. It's not just self-absorbed. It's thinking about what others do. And so it's about following your 3 Ds, which I call the 3 Ds, is daya, compassion, dhamma, your self-restraint, and dan, charity. You cannot go wrong with these 3 Ds. So if you're completely doing this, then your actions are transforming to karma yoga. The second criteria, which we talked about, is samatvam, right? Which we said samatvam yoga uchyate, which is the Bhagavad Gita. It talks about it. Now, when we think of actions, there are always certain outcomes to those actions. One is either it'll lead to success or failure. Like every action will lead to success or failure. There may be monetary gain or loss. There can be subtle praise or criticism from that action, right? So what karma yoga is saying is that maintain equanimity about how you're responding to these outcomes. So you neither get elated in success nor depressed in failure. So this balanced outlook goes a long way in maintaining our emotional, mental, and physical health. So there is another inevitable outcome of all our actions. So that is the merits or demerits. But then again, this is going into the black hole. We don't know how that's going to manifest. So we shouldn't put our thoughts into, if I do this, this is going to happen for me. It may not happen that way for the reasons which I have explained. So it's about not doing all your actions with equanimity. So the next criteria for turning it in karma yoga is, which we spoke about again, is the karmashu kaushalam. It's yoga is karmashu kaushalam. It's the approach behind the work so that we do not accrue more karma. For example, we have the right hand if it's helping the left hand, right? Or one person is helping the next person. So the person, right hand helping the left hand, should not do it with a sense of, I'm doing this. I have achieved it. I'm helping somebody else. The I starts to dissolve with detachment. So there's no doership, and the left hand should not see it like, I've received all this, and there's no enjoyership. So there's no kartatva, there's no bhukritva, there is no ego involved in any of this process. The work is done for the sake of the work. There's no attachment to it. And then, of course, we spoke about the karman yev adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana is the adhikar. We said that people fight for their adhikar. So it's to not do it as an adhikar, but do your actions with detachment to the results. Now, how do you work with detachment? I get asked this sometimes. So the thing is that when we start getting attached to the results, when those expectations are not met, it invariably leads to a lot of disappointments in our life. We get really depressed. And that's why we have to maintain our equanimity. So by working with detachment, we start to break the back of our ego. So your work should be done without praise, fame, glory. You just work for the pleasure of work. So it's all about just breaking your samskars and your habitual tendencies. So you live your life. Do you do your work for the sake of duty, but you have no expectations? You do it with detachment. You maintain detachment in actions, and then you'll be surprised as to how tremendously results start to follow. So that is the thing. But detachment doesn't come very easily to us, right? We have been attached all our lives. How do you start doing actions with detachment, with no, thought about the results? Not, how do you start working like that? So this is, again, you have to employ your yoga, buddhi yoga, and start thinking consciously every moment. Now, the goal of this whole karma yoga is, like we discussed, is to come to nishkam karma, where when there's effort, that is karma. But when work becomes effortless, then we move towards nishkam karma. So we are turning karma into karma yoga by transcending our actions. Now, this is a little high level, but this is the aim and goal of karma yoga. So it's karma yoga starts with first recognizing our gunas, whether we are rajas, tamas, sattva.
Tamas or sattva. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. These are the attributes of prakriti. Now, because all gunas are still attachment, and this is the attribute of prakriti, and Shiv or Purush does not have any of these attributes, it's beyond. So we also have to transcend all these attributes of sattva, rajas, and tamas. So it's not just about sattvic actions. After a point, you have to even let go of sattvic actions, right? Because Purush is just a pure witness. It has no attributes. So by the end of it, it's not just paap, punya, Krishna, Shukla, Krishna, Shukla, any of those things. It's just literally about attaining chitta shuddhi, purity of mind, and clearing the slate altogether in order to become liberated. So this is a stage of balancing the entire karmic account, right? And it is called akarma, or this is what is called nishkam karma. Now, akarma, a lot of people mistake it and say, I will not take any actions then. It's inactivity, that you retire and do nothing. So Bhagavad Gita says it's not inactivity, it's transcendence of karma. Now, this transcendence word leads to a lot of confusion. And we're not understanding how do you transcend a karma. So what Nishkam karma is saying is, this is how the Brahmanyani lives. Non-action in action, action in non-action. Now, how does this work? So karma literally means interaction of two entities. So when we embrace the whole system at once, and not just parts of it, we start to transcend karma. For example, I'm eating some food, and I see my food as being separate from my body, right? So, but the body is a part of the earth, and food is also a part of the earth. So it says that really one part of the earth is eating another part of the earth. Now, who among us really thinks like that? That the net effect is nil. There's no eating going on, really. There's nothing happening. Only an Atma Jnani who is transcended the karma sees this connectedness of the entire cosmos. So he transcends the karmas. He sees the consumed, the consumer, and the process of consumption all as part of the same reality. And there's no ego involved in any of it. And there's another example of Nishkam karma. So suppose we go to see a movie on the screen, and the screen images, they keep changing, but the screen is untouched, right, by the projected images. It does not change with the moving images. So the screen is untouched, and so the screen transcends the images. So in the same way, when a Brahmanyani does action in action, no karma is sticking to him or her. So just like no images stick on the screen. So that's the stage of liberation. Actually, what does the enlightenment really mean? It just means that we are reducing our karmic burden. We have become lighter or completely light. There is no positive, no negative karmas. The slate is entirely clean. So that's how Nishkam karma comes in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's so much there to unpack, but I want to be mindful of your time. Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, and this has come up on the podcast many times before, and that is the importance of a good teacher and conversations about, the role of a guru. So how does a teacher because most people in yoga will first meet teachers and a few will meet their gurus. So how does a teacher or even a guru help with this navigation of karma?
Yes, it's a really interesting question about gurus. We have so many gurus in India at different levels. Like you said, there's some teachers, there can be some school teachers. But when we talk about guru on the spiritual path, we're not talking about just somebody who's giving us knowledge. It's about somebody who's helping you on your spiritual evolution. So somebody who himself or herself has walked on the path of liberation, or who has reached that state of sthit prajna, or a brahmagyani. That's actually the real meaning of the word guru. Now, of course, today's day and age, there's so many self-attested testimonials of gurus out there. So we don't really know who is there or not. This is the first sign of the guru, is that they don't really announce themselves that, I've reached this state. They're always very, very quiet. In fact, they're too quiet about it. So how do they really help? Now, the thing is, we don't go about looking for a guru on this path when we are ready. There's the saying, when we are ready, the guru approaches us. They will come to us. And how does it happen? It's been happening the same way since the guru-shishya time for a long, long time, is that when we attain a certain level of chitta shuddhi, the mind has become purer, our karams have become slightly purer, that we become more mindful about living the right way. We are more conscious, we are more aware that we are taking sattvic actions most of the time and not always being compulsive. Then that's when they start to appear in our life and then start to guide us a little bit more. So it's really because they themselves have walked down the path, they know that what are the pitfalls of the journey. And so they guide other people's karmic journeys as well. And they do have the power to dissolve other people's karmas as well, but only if they see fit. It depends on whether the disciple is making the right effort to correct his or her ways or just wasting the guru's time. But if all sincere efforts that you make in your karmic journey as karma to, transform it to karma yoga, then it starts to draw the grace of a guru. And I've seen it happen. Many, many books have been written about it. One of the most beautiful books I read was about Paul Brunton's journey, how he met Ramana Maharishi. He went all over India searching for a guru, and he met a lot of gurus, and they kept showing him powers. And then he said, yes, you can show me powers, but do you really know God? And that question actually led him to a Maharishi. And that's how the guru-shishya disciple started off. So if we are making the right effort and we're taking positive sattvic actions right now, we are living karam as dharam. That's a very good point as to what is karam as dharam, is that, you do everything which is the right thing to do. Today we all fight for our rights, but nobody's really asked, what is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do by my mother, by my father, by my siblings, by society? We don't really ask those questions. So when we do that, when we're following our own swadharma, which is on natural talents and skills, when we start doing all those things, we live a conscious life, then slowly, somewhere or the other, the guru starts getting attached to us. So that's how the theory or the concept or whatever the practice of a guru comes into our life. Does that answer your question, or is there something else about the guru?
No, it answers my question. I've always in various conversations on this podcast tried to highlight the fact that you can't self-navigate through yoga without the presence of a teacher, a guru, or whoever you have access to, an authentic source. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, because a lot of times, this, Medha, people will pick up bits and pieces of information or misinformation about karma and then create their own versions. And then what happens, right? It's just confusion and chaos, which is why I was bringing it up.
You made a very good point here. So I was talking at a very high level of a guru concept. As we know in India, this concept of guru has existed for thousands of years. It's nothing new. Anybody who goes deep into Sanatan Dharma will see that there are, gurus do exist in India. But when you're talking about on a yoga path, we all need some hand holding along the journey as well, because it's a really, really tough journey, as we know. It's not, roses and gardens over there. We really have a lot of struggle with our inner journey, inner battles, and a lot of de-identification process that is taking place. So for this, we need a guidance of some teacher for sure. And if we want to call them a guru, that's good. That guru is one who takes us away from darkness. So if they're helping us move towards the light, then why not? And like you said, we need to have a more authentic yoga teacher who's rooted in tradition, because they understand. Now, if you follow somebody or a teacher who themselves, are blind on the path, where exactly are they leading you? That's the question. So it's just the blind, following the blind in the valley of darkness. And a lot of the time, this is what's happening. And so I put a lot of emphasis on, thinking about who I'm listening to, which teacher I'm following, what they have done, how much they're studying, or they themselves are working on their sadhana, and how much they are really making an effort to progress themselves. If you start connecting with these teachers, and really it comes down to if your intention is good. It all is about the intention. Really, I've seen this work so many times. It works beautifully. Just have the right intention. Do your karam, do your dharam. Don't need to worry about anything else. It just works out. The right people will come to you, the right guidance, the right teacher along the right path, and at the right time. And this has been happening. This is not something new. It's been happening since ages.
That wraps it up beautifully. There is so much that you have given us in this one conversation about karma, and there's a lot to unpack. And I feel like it's one of those conversations you have to listen to a few times to really let it sink in, because people often look for stuff, but where do they go? They go to Google, right? And that can itself be a big problem, at least in the yoga world. So I'm really glad you brought this up, and not just this, like all that you have mentioned in today's conversation. For the listeners, Medha, where can they connect with you? If they have questions about karma, they want to learn more from you, where can they find you in the virtual world?
Yes, I'm on Instagram at the moment. I'm not a very savvy social media person. I was away for 8 years. I'm still finding.
Oh, really?
I was away for 8 years. I didn't want to be a part of the world while I was studying and writing my book and stuff. And then I realized, I've written a book. Now somebody needs to read it. So I came back on Instagram for that reason alone. But yes, of course, I'm not trying to sell my book to everybody.
No, you should let the listeners know what your book is and what it's about.
It's a journey of a seeker, really. It's about going to India in search of a guru. So if you really want to know who is an authentic guru, how do you find a teacher along the way? What are the pitfalls on the journey of a seeker? And how do you really start to evolve on the spiritual path? And it's really a lot about, it's called Mystic Road Warrior, but it involves mysticism. But mysticism is not something to be afraid of. It's a part of a yogic process. We all know about Siddhi powers. We all know about how, once the Kundalini Shakti starts to awaken. And then there are lots written on this, on the yoga subject. And since we are talking to a yoga audience, they're not novices on this topic. So my book deals with a lot of those questions as well. So it's for a serious seeker. But in any case, if you do have any questions regarding karma yoga particularly, or any other topic on yoga, you can reach me directly through messages on Instagram. I will be very happy to respond to your questions. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Medha. This has been wonderful. I will make sure to link to everything in our show notes, and I hope you will come back for more such conversations.
Yes, you've been a wonderful host. Thank you so much for hosting me today. And yes, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Arundhati. Loved it.
And thank you for listening to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. A quick reminder that my Mindful Yoga Teachers Club meets at the end of every month. If you are a yoga teacher looking for mentorship, then make sure you come check out the Mindful Yoga Teachers Club. All details are at letstalk.yoga, and you can enroll there. You can find me on Instagram and ask me any questions you have about this. We will be meeting the week after this podcast drops. So here's your monthly reminder. I'll see you next week with a brand new conversation and guest. Until then, enjoy your practice. Bye-bye.